Okay, on page 60, we're going to see a statement of the Haggadah. A statement of the Haggadah, and we're going to look at 4 or 5 answers to this statement because it raises a big question. And the statement that is found in the Haggadah, which is based upon Pesukim, please, phones away and books open to page 60. Halfway down, the Haggadah tells us, B'chol dor v'dor, in each and every generation, Chayav Adam, a person is obligated, lirot et atzmo, a person has to see themselves, ki'ilu hu yatzah Mitzrayim, as though they left Egypt. That is what the Haggadah tells us. Every person has to see themselves as though they left Egypt. When? On Pesach. Lirot et atzmo. What does that mean? See yourself as though you left Egypt. I've never been to Egypt. See yourself as you left. What does that mean? Jasmine.
Put yourself in their shoes, all the struggles and everything that they went through.
Very good. So one answer is going to have to be, you have to kind of like identify with what they went through. Or as you said very nicely, put yourself in their shoes. Feel what they went through. Experience it. Identify yourself as though you yourself were there. So you feel the experience on a very personal level. Mina.
Like, look and see how you experience your own Mitzrayim.
Okay. So I guess you could say that is you have to relate to that experience. Relate to it. They went through it. And there's aspects of Mitzrayim, as we saw already, we're going to see again, that still apply. We're all still avadim, slaves to various things, people, places, bad traits. So if they got out, we can get out as well. We relate to it. Maya.
Remember.
To remember it. Okay. That's fair enough.
Like we say Kiddush and all of these things that, I've learned that that's what part of it is like Secher.
Zachor is to remember. We're going to talk about that word a lot. Zachor doesn't just mean to remember. To remember something is lo tishkach, don't forget. Remember Zachor always, whether it's on Pesach or Shabbat, means I'm doing something in order to remember. So you're absolutely right. Good girl. Yes?
I feel like Pesach is the time that it kind of reminds you to hold on to that bitachon and that you have.
So, very nice. Okay. Feel as though you left. So feel as though the emunah, the faith that they had, these are good answers, people. People had the right breakfast this morning. Have faith in the process. Hashem took us out, and have emunah. And emunah is going to have a major part of this story. We're not there yet. These are good answers. I like this. I'll give you Rashi's answer, and then I'll give you the Rambam's answer. And then I'll give you a couple more. It goes like this. The Haggadah says, feel as though you left Egypt. You have to see yourself as though you were a slave and Hashem took you out. That is what the Haggadah tells us, based upon Pesukim that we're going to see from the Torah. So how do we understand this statement? Because I've never been to Egypt. I have no desire to go there. I definitely don't want to be a slave in Egypt. So what exactly is the Haggadah expecting me to do? Well, in a basic level, is to have gratitude, right? Because, says Rashi, had our ancestors not been taken out, we would still be there. So it's as though we were taken out. That's Rashi's answer. When it says, see yourself as though you left, it's because you did leave. Well, not you, but your ancestors left. And had they not left in the Jewish year 2448, on the 15th of Nisan, we would still be there. And you would be a free person sitting around discussing that Geula, that redemption. And therefore, says Rashi, since your ancestors were taken out, it's as though you're taken out. Because had they not been, you wouldn't be here. That's Rashi. The Rambam, as we're going to see, brings this lahalacha. Well, how can you bring this lahalacha to Jewish law? It's a piece of advice, isn't it? So the Rambam is going to add a letter into this verse. Does anyone know what letter the Rambam is going to add, which is going to change this and turn it into a very clear mitzvah? So what he does is the following. When he quotes this in the laws of Pesach, he says, Chayav Adam la harot. He adds a hey. He adds a hey. What does that do to the word? What's the difference between lirot and laharot? Very good. Lirot is to see. Laharot is to be seen, to show, to demonstrate. Laharot is to see, right? To show, to demonstrate. So he's like, I'll tell you exactly what's happening. What the Haggadah is saying, based upon verses from the Torah, is that every person, Chayav Adam, laharot et atzmo, has to show and demonstrate themselves as though they were slaves in Egypt taken out. Well, how do I do that? Well, there's a number of mitzvot that include Torah mitzvot, rabbinic mitzvot, and even minhagim, customs, that we all do at the Pesach Seder, which are going to be our way of showing that we were slaves. An example of a Torah mitzvah that we are going to do is eat matzah. That is a Torah Doraita mitzvah, which we're going to talk about in a lot more detail. Reading the Haggadah, talking about it, is a Torah mitzvah. Then we have rabbinic mitzvot. We are going to drink wine, and we are going to lean and make barachot and eat karpas. All of these things are rabbinic mitzvot that are us demonstrating and showing that we were slaves in Egypt and we got out. That's laharot. There are minhagim as well. Many people have customs which have developed in their community or maybe even their family, which show us showing, identifying, relating, remembering, re-experiencing the exodus from Egypt. Right? Some people will beat their family members with what? Green, right, with spring onions actually, that's right. Some people will, someone once told me this, some people will jump over water, right? Anyone do this? I think it's the Moroccans do that, for example. Some people will climb over water as if to say create Yam Suf, right? Some people will have the Seder plate. We also will unfold it. We'll show the matzah, hide the matzah. There are many different minhagim. These minhagim should not be light in your eyes. They have a lot of significance. According to the Rambam, this is how you fulfill the mitzvot of the Pesach Seder. A person has to see themselves or to show and demonstrate that they were slaves and they got out. Yeah.
Who added the hay?
The Rambam, when he quotes this in the laws of Chametz u'Matzah, he adds the hay and turns it into lirot, to see, as into laharot, to show, to demonstrate, to be seen. To be seen. That's the Rambam's addition, which clears this up. So this verse over here, that a person has to see themselves, so they left Egypt, is a... Okay? I'll give you another understanding of this. We've done two. We did Rashi and we did the Rambam. Let's jump forward a little bit. And this is one we actually mentioned already in previous classes. Rabbi Dessler says, actually, you see yourself as you left Egypt because you are leaving Egypt every
Day.
No.
There's a mindset.
Every Pesach. Every Pesach, the time comes around, remember this? The time comes around to that time of year, and the energy of that time, bayam mehem, bazman hazeh, at this time, it happened in those days. But you're kind of, as he says, you're traveling on a train track, and your train stops at various places along the way. One of those places is called Zman Cherutenu, the time of freedom. You get to that station and you're able to achieve freedom even today. So when it says, Chayv Adam lerot et atzmo kilu hu yaseh Mitzrayim, see yourself as though you left Egypt, he actually says, you're not physically, geographically leaving Egypt, but you are emotionally and spiritually leaving your own personal Mitzrayim. Well, how can I do that? It's the time. The time allows you to do that. And that's going to be true, he says, for all the Jewish holidays. We're going to look at Purim we spoke about, that's Simcha. Pesach is freedom. We're going to talk about Shavuot, it's going to be Torah. And there are bad times as well, like Tisha B'Av, where there is a negative time in the air, where we're going to refrain from doing things because of the negative energy of that time. Everyone understand his answer? So he's like, you can see yourself as though you left because it's the time to do it. That's Rabbi Dessler's understanding of this question. Yeah?
So when Rambam says we wrote to Leharu,
Yeah.
it says to show and demonstrate, is that specifically through like halachot that we take on?
Yeah, the mitzvah, doraita, rabbanan, right? Or even minhagim. You demonstrate it. You're going to lean, for example. That's you showing I'm a free person now. So we're going to lean. That's part of the, haseba is a mitzvah, a rabbinic mitzvah, but a mitzvah nonetheless. And I'm demonstrating I'm a free person. So I'm showing, Chayv Adam lerot et atzmo. I'm laharot. I'm showing, I was a slave. My ancestors were, but I'm free.
And that's within like your family.
Well, that's actually derabbanan for every Jew. Then we have stuff that is particular and peculiar to certain families and communities. Minhagim, yeah. Minhagim. Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard of very unusual minhagim that people have in certain families. And all these minhagim have tremendous significance, to that particular community, that family, and shouldn't be poo-pooed, right? Okay, I'll give you another answer. This answer comes, so let's jump forward to the modern day. There was a rabbi called Rav Schwab, who was actually on the KAJ in Washington Heights of Manhattan. He was head of the German community. He gives a very deep answer to this question. I want you to listen very carefully. It's a very deep answer, but its significance is very, very important. His name was Rabbi Shimon Schwab. He was a very great thinker and religious leader. And he wrote in a book the following idea, which I found and answers this question. Once again, what's the question? The question is, why are we expected, or how are we expected, to see ourselves as though we left Egypt? So we looked at Rashi, we looked at the Rambam, we looked at Rav Dessler, and he gives his answer. And he says, if the Haggadah is telling us, because the Torah describes the exodus from Egypt in the first person, but say, Ti Mitzrayim, I left Egypt, it must be that I am leaving and I got out. No, I didn't get out. My ancestors got out. No. You got out. What do you mean I got out? I've never been there. So he says, the fact that you don't think you were there is your misunderstanding of Jewish history and the Jewish people. And let me explain, and this is his metaphor, which is a great metaphor. Do you remember being a 1-week-old baby? No. Does it look like you? Probably not. Right? Does it sound like you? No. Do you remember being a 1-week-old baby? No. If someone were to show you a photo of you as a 1-week-old baby, there's probably no way you could identify yourself unless someone pointed and said, that's you. I mean, it is you. On a DNA level, if you could extract DNA from, yourself and that baby, you could identify yourself. But I don't remember it. You don't need to remember it. It's still you. 1 second. Let's download the idea, then we'll look at questions on it. It goes like this. He says the Jewish people shouldn't be seen as different individuals over the millennia. That's a misunderstanding of Jewish history. The Jewish people are one big organic whole that have evolved over time. But they are ish echad belev echad, as the description at Har Sinai, one person with one heart. In other words, there's an early version of us as a nation, and there's a later version of us, and there's a much later version of us as a people. So when it says, see yourself as though you left Egypt, it was you. at your earliest stages as a nation. But I don't remember it. So what? You don't remember being a 1 week old either. That's still you. But it doesn't sound like me. So what? DNA? You know what? DNA-wise, it's based upon, and by the way, you can probably find DNA that connects you to that earlier version of yourself. So his whole point is, this is actually teaching us, this idea of seeing yourself as though you left Egypt is actually teaching us a really important lesson about what it means to be part of the Jewish people. Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, which is, we are all connected and we're really one nation, one being, one group that share a commonality, not just of like history, but of our selves, our being, our soul, our nishamot. This is just an earlier version of us. So see yourself as though you left Egypt. You left Egypt, whether you remember it or not. That's the amazing idea of Rav Schwab. He's saying that this should be taken literally. You left Egypt in your earlier days as a nation. So I guess he's looking at it more from a national angle as opposed to the other commentators, Rashi, the Rambam, and others, saw it as a personal redemption, which it is, Rav Dessler. He's looking at it as more of a national redemption, which it was as well. Yeah.
Isn't it also kind of how we were all at Har Sinai? So we were also all like in Egypt, or is it not?
Yeah, 100%. It was 100%. It was one soul.
Like our souls.
Ishacha b'lev echad, right? That nation that had unity at Har Sinai. That unity started at Mitzrayim. 100%. Yeah.
Building off what Alex said, you know the verse that it has that all Jewish souls and neshamas were at the giving part at the Torah?
We're going to talk about it when we get to Shavuot. Yeah, every soul was present.
Could you say that potentially the same was similar to this when the Jews were leaving Egypt?
Yeah.
I think that's what we were talking about.
100%.
That's why
100%. It's the united soul that just the unity came to full force at Har Sinai. It took 50 days. At this point, it wasn't so much, but at that point it was. It took time, 50 days, to reach that level of absolute.
like connected, like one,
It's not connected. We became one. It's like one person.
unification type of thing that we unified into one person. Can you say that then we, like that's another way to say that we, like how we expected to see ourselves leaving Egypt? Because if there's this whole idea that, you know, all of our neshamas were there to see, you know, all of.
We're saying over here, he's saying more than that. He's not saying that all the neshama were there. He's saying we are one neshama.
He was saying we were one neshama.
One neshama.
Leaving Egypt?
Yes, but we really culminating at Har Sinai. Okay, so that's that. Okay, good. We're going to revisit this idea, but that's important. We looked at 4 answers. I'll give you one of my great teachers, actually, last one. He actually says that you're meant to mentally visualize the redemption from Egypt. See yourself as though, Rabbi Abraham Twersky said this. I went to one of his shiur many years ago, one of my teachers, role models, and I was lucky enough to have a relationship. He wrote a commentary on the Haggadah, which is excellent. It's all about personal redemption. So he says, while it's going on, all the sounds and the smells and the tastes of the Pesach Seder are there to help you conjure up in your mind that you were a slave and now you're free. You're meant to imagine it and pick it up. Okay? So those are 4 or 5 answers to this question that people are obligated to see themselves as though they left Egypt. Good? All right. Okay, let's change topic a little bit. And let's go back to a topic we discussed in terms of Purim, but look at it in a very different way when it comes to Pesach. And that is miracles, yeah.
One more question. The Maharal was the first one.
Yeah.
And what was his?
So the Maharal, now actually he quotes it. He just brings down the obligation to do it and brings down the verse in the Torah, it was done for me. So the pasuk is in the first person. That's what the Maharal of Prague is doing over there. Okay? He's just quoting this and quoting the pasuk as its source. All right? Okay. Let's talk about miracles, because miracles, nisim, are going to play a big part in the Pesach redemption. We have to see why. Why is it that miracles, nisim, are going to play such an important part? Now, we spoke that Purim is all about hidden miracles. Nisim, nistarim, hidden miracles. Remember Esther, Purim? Pesach, my dear friends, is going to be about nisim, giluyim, niglim, revealed miracles. Miracles that are revealed, that change the course of nature, when nature is upturned. That did not happen in the Purim story. Purim story follows natural events, where the natural world is not upturned. This story, however, this Pesach description is going to involve the upturning of nature. What do we call the events of Pesach night? What do we call the Pesach? It's called the Seder. The Seder. What does the word Seder actually mean? Order, yeah. Like a Siddur is the order of prayers. Why do we call the Pesach Seder Seder? Because, let me just back up my question. If you look at the Pesach Seder, it's actually the opposite of order. It's the upturning of the order events. It's olam hafuch, right? There's plagues, there's frogs, there's blood, there's lice, animals. We have a number of miracles, open miracles that are happening. That's not the order, the natural order. The natural order is that things do not break the natural cycle. And yet, my dear friends, the Pesach Seder is called the order. Hear the question? It should be called not the order. This is not the order. So I want to answer like this. Listen very carefully, and then we'll jump into the miracles themselves and go through specifically the Eser Makot, the 10 plagues. The natural order for the Jewish people is the miraculous. That is our order. For the other nations of the world, that's not the natural order. But for us, Am Yisrael, Ka Yisrael, and more importantly, the creation of the Jewish people, because remember, the Jewish people are being created right now through miracles by Hashem. Hashem himself, we weren't created like other nations that basically are groups of people who got together and started a country, started a language, and started a nation, and built laws. We were created by HaKadosh Baruch. Hashem himself went into Mitzrayim to take us out. And it was done through miracles. So the creation of the Jewish people was through overt, nisim gluyim, revealed miracles. We were created as a nation with open miracles. That means, say the rabbis, that this is going to become our natural order of things that defy the natural order, aka nisim, miracles. That is the natural order for us. Now those miracles, we want to be good miracles, right? We want good positive miracles or good things happening. Unfortunately, in history as well, many bad things have happened to us, which almost seem miraculous as well, unfortunately. Just go against the natural order in terms of, but this is not one of those events. This event is, this whole Pesach Seder is describing the natural order of the Jewish people, which is Nisim Gluyim, revealed, right? Nes Nigla, revealed miracles. Are we clear on this? So we're going to look at the various miracles that happen, and each one of these miracles is going to teach us something important. It's not just random miraculous events. Each one of them comes specifically for a certain amount of time, in a certain way, in order to do something. Okay? So, first of all, let's talk about the Eser Makot, the 10 plagues that happened to the Jewish people in Mitzrayim. Each one of these Makot came in order to teach us and the rest of the world something. Well, first of all, let's start with the number 10. Okay, because there were 10 of them. So once again, we're in the world of miracles, in the world of revealed miracles. This is the beginning of the Jewish people. This is the natural Seder that's being set up for the rest of Jewish history. So why were there 10? That's the first question. Why do we have 10 plagues? What does the number 10 represent that Hashem decided to use 10 of them in order to defeat the Egyptians and to get us out? So we have 10 commandments. Very good. That we're going to receive 50 days after leaving. It's got to be related, right? 10 plagues, 10 commandments. What other 10s are there? So we have 10 plagues. We have 10 commandments. Aseret Dibrot.
What's God's name in Hebrew? Isn't that also 10?
No. What other 10 do we have? 10 in a minyan. 10 makes a minyan. Very good. That's interesting. 10 makes a minyan, a quorum for our tefillot to be accepted. Estes Kabbalah speaks about it as well. You're missing a big one. The biggest one probably.
Tribes.
There were 12 tribes. 10. You have to go back to creation.
Oh, 10 months.
There were 10 statements that Hashem used to create the world. Hashem, right, made 10. You see the word Vayomer is mentioned 10 times in creation of the world. Hashem created the world with 10 ma'amorim, 10 statements. He spoke the world into being. He spoke the words of the 10 commandments for the Jewish people. And Hashem took the nation that tried to break Hashem's existence in this world and destroy the Jewish people and gave them 10 makot, 10 plagues to put back onto them, which they try to destroy creation. So Hashem used creation against them by giving them 10 plagues to fight them. So it's Hashem creates 10, they defiled us, so Hashem used 10 to defeat them. So 10 always represent, there's another 10 by the way, just came to my head. There's another 10. Aseret Yemei Tshuva. The 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah being the first 2 of those 10, and Yom Kippur being the 10th. Because Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the month of Tishrei, and Yom Kippur appears on the 10th day. There cannot be coincidence that the recreation of a person doing teshuvah also is a 10-day plan, even though he's not even doing teshuvah on the first 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. We'll speak about that next semester. So there are also 10 days of self-creation. So 10 is always going to represent a change. It's a change. It's a change of that which happened in the past. That's the number. You see the number 10? I'm creating something new. A new vision of myself between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. A new world, right? A defeat of the Mitzrayim with the 10 plagues. A new people with mitzvot, which came in the form of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 commandments. 10 represents complete negation of what came before and something brand new, which is interesting because there is a number 10, is there? There's a number 1, there's a number 2, there's a number 3, and a 4, and a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 is actually a multiple. You go back to 1 and then you go back to the beginning, if you will. Can you see that? That's what the Maharal of Prague says. 10 actually does not exist as its own particular number. It's a multiple of what comes before. That's what he says. Now, these 10 plagues that we're going to talk about, that the Torah makes a big deal out of in the Haggadah, the story of Pesach is going to speak about, actually is going to be divided up into groupings. And these groupings were there to teach us a lesson. And the Egyptians. Remember, the plagues weren't just for us, they were for everyone. Everyone in the whole world knew the plagues were coming. So we have 10 plagues. We have Eser Makot. We have 10 plagues. And these 10 plagues are going to be divided up into 4 groups. Which is going to be referenced in the Haggadah as well. It's going to be 3, 3, 3, and 1. That's going to be the breakout, or breakdown actually, of these 10 plagues. So let's have a look at the breakdown of the plagues. Because although there were 10 plagues, they came or described in 4 groups, 3, 3, 3, and 1. Now, the first 2 of each set of 3 came with a warning. Came with a warning that lasted in some cases for weeks. And then it was 1 week of plague. However, the last of the 3 in the first 3, right, the third of the third, if you will, did not come with a warning, and the plague kicked in. Which pretty much means that these 10 plagues pretty much span out over nearly an entire year, right? Because you have weeks of warning, week of plague, right, for the first 2, for 1, 2, and then 4, 5, 7, 8, right? And then the last one, of course, there was a warning, and that's going to be the death of the firstborn. Okay, so let's go through these plagues, and let's learn out some important points, because they came specifically to do something different in each case. So the first 3 are Dam, Tzefadea, Kinim, which is blood. So we're grouping these together. Frogs, which actually were not frogs. Sforno says they were, Tzefadea, he says, actually was more like crocodiles or alligators, something more, which changes the entire plague into something a lot more frightening than just frogs around. Yeah, the Sforno says that, but it's written in a few places. Blood, frogs, and kinim, lice. That's the first grouping of 3. The first grouping of 3. The first 2 came with a warning. The last one did not come with a warning. What are these 3? Now, each one of these we could talk about for a long time, because each one comes to teach us something, but what do these 3 have in common? What do these 3 have in common? Yeah. So the blood affected the water. The frogs came out of the water, and the lice came out of the dust of the earth. So this is Hashem saying that the physical world is under my control. You, the Egyptians, defiled it. I'm going to now defile you through these first 3. I am God, and I have power over the physical location. That's the waters and the earth. And all this shows this shows the existence of God on this earth. That's the first 3. That's Dam, Tzefadea, and Kinim. As a side point, these first 3 were not performed directly by Moshe Rabbeinu. It was Aaron, his older brother. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu not actively create these first 3? Because of a concept called Hakarat Hatov, gratitude, even to inanimate objects. Why would Moshe Rabbeinu have to be grateful to the water and to the dust of the earth? So the answer is because it was the water, the Nile, that saved his life. Remember that? When his sister Miriam put him into the Teva and put him out. So all those years later, we're talking 80 years later, Moshe Rabbeinu was still had to be considerate to the inanimate object called the water and not affected by turning to blood or pulling the frogs out. How about the dust of the earth that the lice came from? So Moshe Rabbeinu was saved because he killed the Mitzri who was trying to kill a Jew, and he buried him in the sand, the dirt of Mitzrayim. So all the sand, the dirt protected you. You can't hit it and give it this power of being plagued. That would not be right. This idea of having gratitude to inanimate objects doesn't mean we believe there's inanimate objects to be life. We're meant to learn how to kal v'chomer, right? And an example of, if I'm nice to inanimate objects, then I'll be nice to animate objects like people. That's what you're meant to learn out from this, okay? And that's why, for example, there's a custom we cover over the challah, right? Why we make kiddush, because really we should make the bracha on hamotzi first. But we can't, because we have to do kiddush on the wine. So what do? We cover over the challah. One of the reasons is because the challah gets embarrassed. I promise you, challah does not get embarrassed. It's not about the challah, it's about you. You need to have what? Compassion, yeah. Over the challah, because you need to work on your compassion towards people. If you can have it towards inanimate objects, you'll have it towards more animate ones, people as well. So when we say the challah gets embarrassed, it doesn't mean it's like embarrassed hiding under the challah cover that we saw as a kid. It means that we take care to even have compassion upon all parts of creation, right? Animals, vegetation. We want to use things correctly. So Moshe Rabbeinu is part of that. So these first three did not come, but they did come upon the Egyptians, and Hashem had no compassion upon them. That's the first three, okay? The second,
I don't understand. You said that they were done by Aaron.
So Aaron was the one who had to do an action. Each one of the plagues involved an action. Throwing something up in the air, throwing the dust in the air in order. It always involved something. So Aaron was the one who was tasked with bringing the plague. Hashem brought the plague, it came from Hashem. But Moshe and Aaron had to, by the way, this is true, this is important, I think we mentioned this before. Every miracle in the entire Torah, and actually in the prophets as well, whenever miracles occurred, there's always somebody doing something. Always somebody doing something. Why is that important? For example, the sea is going to split 7 days after we leave Egypt. Create Yam Suf. What does Hashem do? He brings down an easterly wind all night. This keeps our free will intact so that you can attribute it to non-God. Right? Otherwise, free will has been removed. So there's always got to be some physical pu'ula, some action, so that your free will stays intact. In other words, it doesn't come out of nowhere, right? The frogs don't just pop out of nowhere. They come from the things like people just drop dead for no reason. Hashem could do that if he wants to. He always keeps our free will intact so that we can attribute it to other places other than God, which many of the Egyptians did. And Paro definitely did, without a shadow of a doubt, which is why even after all the plagues, he still left Egypt in order to go and get them. So even his free will was kept intact. Okay. So that people in that generation and future generations say, the sea split because of a wind. They have to have that ability to say that. Because if they don't, then there's no free will. Free will must be intact in Olam Hazeh. In Olam Haba, it's going to change, but that's the way it has to be. Okay, we good? Okay, next set of three are Orev, Dever, and Shechin. wild animals, plague on them, and boils, which were extremely painful. What do these three have in common? What do these three have in common? We're dealing with life animals, land animals, the life of land animals, and humans. Well, where are these three located? Wild animals, the plague that destroyed animals, and the boils. What do they have in common? They affect things upon the land. So the first three deal with the land itself, water and land. The second three are what's upon the land. That's the second three. What's upon the land. Hashem is saying, I don't just control. There are people who said, yeah, God created the world, but what happens on the world, God's not involved in. So Hashem says, right, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you that I'm in control of the earth, the physical work that I created, but I'm also heavily invested and create everything that's on the earth, animal and human. So that's the second order. Okay? And the first two had warnings, and the third one did not. The third grouping of three also have, we could talk about each one of these plagues individually, but the third order are hail, barad, arbe, and choshech. Hail, locust, darkness. Hail, locusts, and darkness. By the way, these plagues are getting worse and worse. They're actually progressing from bad to extremely bad. And by the way, there were miracles within the miracles. For example, you may have learned this when you were kids in school. The blood came, the Nile turned to blood. But if you wanted, you could have fresh water when you bought it from a Jew, because it did not affect the Jewish people in their area. That's when we got involved with the water business. Started a long time ago. Yeah? We were the first sellers of Evian, which backwards is naive. Okay, never mind. Yeah?
I have a question. The second accept, who initiated him?
This is Moshe Rabbeinu. Next, we have hail, locust, darkness. So what does this have in common?
The sky.
Right, things coming from above. So Hashem's like, I'm in control of the land. I'm in control of everything upon the land, but I'm also in control of the skies. Right? Because the hail came from above. The locusts swarm in from above. The darkness came from above. It blocked the sun. So Hashem's like, I'm now in control of the heavens. And then finally, the biggest plague of them all was the death of firstborn, which is really a culmination of all the previous ones, saying that Hashem, God, is in control of life and death, controls life on the earth, in the earth, on the earth, and above the earth. And primarily to get Paro moving because he was a firstborn, although there were multiple firstborns in each house. How could that be? How could you have multiple firstborn children in each house? Because you had one woman who had relations with many men, so it was the firstborn not of her, but of these various individuals with that particular woman. So we spoke about the licentiousness of Mitzrayim. That was part of it. Yeah, that was part of it. Okay. So that's the first idea of the revealed miracles that turn out. Now, just as a side point, we're speaking about hidden miracles, Purim. We're speaking about revealed miracles, Pesach. How about the final redemption when Mashiach comes? Is that going to be hidden miracles, like Purim? Or is that going to be revealed miracles, like Pesach? So that, say the rabbis, is dependent upon us. If we merit with tremendous siyata d'shma, with God's help, and we have great zchut, it's going to be revealed. Because of the two, revealed miracles make a bigger and greater Kiddush Hashem. And so we want more revealed miracles, the upturning of nature. That's preferable. If we merit it, it's going to be like that. Like the prophet says, like a star that passes through the sky, visible to everyone, and Mashiach's arrival and all the events surrounding Mashiach's arrival will be miraculous in nature. However, if we do not merit it, we're going to merit a redemption because Hashem's got to redeem us because He promised our ancestors. So that's definitely going to happen. However, if we don't merit the miraculous version, it's going to come in a non-miraculous way. And the metaphor from the prophet is like a poor person riding on a donkey, like an ani rochev al chamor. Chamor is a donkey, but the word chamor also means physical, chumriut. So it's going to be a more mundane revelation where the rules of nature are not going to be upturned for that final redemption of the Jewish people. Mashiach is coming, that's a given. But it's up to us and our merits whether we get a miraculous one, which we want, or a mundane one, which we want, but ain't as good. Okay? So those are two ways it could turn around.
The second one comes
When Hashem is like, I'm going to have to just take you out. I'll give you geula because I promised you, but you don't merit through your actions to have a miraculous one.
I remember this from your Shliach class.
Yeah.
What were they called in Hebrew again?
Be'ito achishena.
Yeah.
Yes. In its time or earlier. Some say that in its time when it comes, if the redemption comes because Hashem promised it, or if it comes through our teshuvah. Very good. If it comes through our teshuvah, it's going to be miraculous. If it comes because the clock ticks out in Hashem's timing of things, then that's just the way it is. All right? And it was the suffering, actually, of the Jewish people in Egypt that gave them the merit of this miraculous redemption. Went through so much suffering that Hashem was like, you deserve it. The merit can come in various ways. Personally, I don't like the suffering, but it seems to be the way Hashem is doing it now. All right. Let's talk about another miracle that nobody seems to speak about too often, but it was one of the great miracles that happened in Mitzrayim. So we're still in Mitzrayim, and the miracles are happening. And everyone knows about it. Shabbat HaGadol. Shabbat HaGadol. Let's have a look at this. And in order to understand this, we need a bit of a background. There was a great miracle that happened to the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, which we commemorate with something called Shabbat HaGadol, the Great Shabbat. Now, Shabbat HaGadol has no date. It's the Shabbat that occurs before Pesach. That's called Shabbat HaGadol. And generally speaking, it's just a Shabbat before Pesach, and the custom is that we all go to synagogue to hear the rabbi give a very long drasha into Pesach and Hilchot Pesach. And the custom is because there's so many laws when it comes to Pesach, as we're going to see, chametz, matzah, dalek kosot. It's about so much going on that the custom was that everyone came to synagogue the Shabbat before Pesach because that's when people are available. Come to shul, the rabbi gives his drasha, and we're good to go. All right? However, there was a miracle that occurred. And it happened on a very specific date. We commemorate it not on that date. We commemorate it the Shabbat before Pesach. What was this miracle? So this is the miracle of the lamb. The Korban Pesach lamb. So in order to understand this, we need to know about a particular god, small g, that existed in Egypt. And that is sheep. Some way, in some form, the Egyptians had many gods, right? A whole plethora, a Costco full of gods. Tons of them. Thousands. We're going to see why Moshe Rabbeinu turning up with the one true God is going to cause such a storm, because that concept of God did not exist up to that point. Because all these gods were gods that they feared, because they needed the sun. So the sun god, Ra. They needed the fish. There was a fish god, Dagon. There was gods for everything. And the gods need to be appeased. Okay.
Feared like actual fear?
Actual fear, yeah. Being fear that they're going to hurt me, bad things are happening. They used to have to sacrifice or do various things.
Not like in Judaism, like actual fear.
A little bit of that, but actual fear. Actual fear. Right? We have to make the gods happy. Okay. This, many years later, the Greeks took this to a whole different level, right, and made them almost human, and Christianity was part of that, where they, even put human form into it. This is the antithesis of Judaism and Torah. Okay, so now, the small g gods in Egypt included sheep. They used to worship sheep. Okay? They used to see something, which is actually one of the reasons they didn't like the Jews. What was the main occupation of Jewish people? They were shepherds, going back, right? We have the Roy Yisrael, the shepherds of Israel. Avram, there were many jobs you could do in those days, agricultural, but being a shepherd was one of them. So one reason they hated the Jews was because they worked with their gods, and when you work with sheep, you have to hit them sometimes. Right? Get out of the way. They didn't like that. I guess it was a necessary evil, but they didn't like us. That we naturally were shepherds. So Hashem said the following: before you leave Egypt, you're going to make a meal. You're going to take the God of the Egyptians. I know this is not so PC. It's more AC. It's not politically correct. It's absolutely correct. You're going to take this lamb, and you're going to keep it in your homes to make sure that it's okay. You're going to tie it to your beds. I never understood this as a kid. Why are you tying a because there was no furniture in those days. All you had was the thing you slept on. There was no sofa, right? Your bed was pretty much it. There's a bread, there's a fire. That's about it. That's all they had. So you tie it so it doesn't get away, and it's going to be there for a number of days. And then at some point you're going to kill this animal, take its blood, put it on the mezuzot, the doorpost of your home. More about that later, the significance of that. You're going to then cook it and eat it as the Korban Pesach. Basically, we were told to catch, kill, cook, and eat the Egyptian god. Interesting. So where does this miracle that we're discussing right now kick in? What's happening? So the Torah tells us on page 64, he says the reason the Shabbat before Pesach is called Shabbat HaGadol is because a great miracle happened to the Jewish people on the 10th of Nisan. On the 10th of Nisan, they were told to take for yourselves, as it says in Shemot, Yud Bet Gimel 12:3, take for yourselves a sheep. Every family needs to take a sheep. So it's a family mitzvah. A family mitzvah. It's not on the Yachid, it's on the Mishpacha. And they did it. Happens to be the 10th of the month of that year, he says, was Shabbat. Maybe that's why we celebrate and commemorate this miracle, Shabbat. Well, what's the miracle? We took a sheep and we took it inside our houses. Yeah, but everyone knew what we were going to do with that sheep. And the Egyptians normally would have gone crazy, right? Smashed us up, beaten us, killed us, and freed the sheep, I guess. But for some reason, each person took a sheep, the kashrut, or they tied it Bekaria mitato, to the legs of the bed, which we said was the only furniture they had. V'shalom Mitzrayim, and the Egyptians would be like, Lama zelachem, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing over here? Right? And they said, well, we've taken it because Hashem has commanded us, and we're gonna l'shochto, we're gonna kill it, l'shem Pesach, as our Pesach meal, which is going to be the meal we eat right before leaving Mitzrayim. This is going to be our last meal. The Egyptians were furious, and the miracle was because we were about to kill and eat their small g god, not their OG, not the original god, but the small g. And because of this great miracle, they weren't able somehow to attack us. We were protected. We're not told specifically how, but we were protected from this attack from the Egyptians in Mitzrayim right before we left, and able to eat their God. And by the way, did you know it's very unusual when it came to this eating? As part of the Korban Pesach, you weren't allowed to cut it up or chop it up, make shawarma out of it. You had to cook it whole, complete. Do you know why? So everyone could see it. You couldn't break it bones because that would make it indistinguishable from other meats. Everyone had to know that this was a sheep. So it was done on full display. Everyone knew about it, right in the faces of the Mitzrayim.
Is that connected to Lehom?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. It would be. That was the mitzvah. Now, we don't do this nowadays, right? This is a mitzvah that is related to the time of the Beit HaMikdash. But it was for a long time. The Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael, they used to make a Korban Pesach. They would take it, bring it, purify themselves, and eat it. Okay? So those are the main miracles. We're going to talk about Kriyat Yam Suf later. But those are the main miracles of us in Mitzrayim and being redeemed from Mitzrayim. That is, as we said earlier, the natural Seder. The natural Seder for us, the Jewish people, is miraculous. Okay? Let's have a look at one last source, and then we'll take any questions on the midterm, which is this Thursday. Oh, you look so happy about that, all of you. Okay, look on page 65. It says, the truth is that the whole exodus from Egypt is about Hashem. And only Hashem can do open miracles. Right? Only Hashem can do that. And so all of these miracles are there to give us emunah, give us faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in God. Because there were people who did not believe in God. There were people who believed in God who thought he wasn't powerful. There were people who thought there was a God who's not powerful, but he's not aware of everyday events. All the miracles came and undid those three. There's a God, he's aware of what's happening in this world, and he's active in it. Not just like, there were people then and people today. Yeah, God may be some higher power created the world, but he's not involved. It's just stuff just moves along. No. And okay, fine. Maybe he's aware of what's happening, but he's not actually doing anything about it. We also don't believe in that. Right? There's a God, he created the world. He's aware of what's happening in it, and he actively participates in the world. Has an active participation in it. How do you prove that? He uses the Jewish people. We were slaves. Hashem comes in, and Hashem takes us out. He himself. Is there a clear example of Hashem being involved in this world? Right? Coming in and like taking out a nation from another nation, from the Kor HaBarazel, from the iron furnace that was Mitzrayim. And it demonstrated something which the Egyptians were very into, which is whatever you see, you see. They were very into the physical. Even death for them may have not been the final part of life, but they thought you could take stuff with you. Right? They used to bury themselves with treasures and stuff. We Jews were never into that. Right? No one's buried with treasures to take with us. Right? It's not Seder Derech. You're not like, like you leave your grandmother, you take a sandwich with you. Nothing goes with you. That's when you bury a person. We are buried in tachrichim, in shrouds that have no pockets. Rabbi Gamliel created that and said no pockets, because you can't take anything with you. Right? Just your neshama goes to the next world. So all of these things are related to this reality. Okay? Okay, we'll stop there because the next piece is going to take me about 15 minutes to get through.